In the meantime, Keith, I'll hand the microphone over to you and whenever you want to get started.
Okay, I'm ready. Welcome everyone to the September Kings Beach Parking Management Stakeholders Meeting. My name is Keith Wells. I'm a parking enforcement officer. With me today remotely is our Deputy Director, Jared Deck. He's the Deputy Director of the Tahoe Public Works Division, Public Works Tahoe Engineering Division. I have Mandy Velasquez with me. She's our Administrative Assistant. We have Sky Sutton. She's our Seasonal Parking Enforcement Officer. A quick recap of the parking program is the county initiated this program to better gain control of the parking in the Kings Beach community. The goal is to balance the parking for the beach, the commercial core, the residential core, and balance the supply and demand needs. We have a full-time parking enforcement program now that runs all summer. We use technology and enforcement, the balance between those two, to control people's habits, where they're parking, when they're parking. We use the technology to gather data, to initiate enforcement, issue citations when necessary. And the goal of our program is to have a strong relationship with the community, a good relationship with the tourists that arrive here, and try and educate everybody on where they can park, when they can park, so you have a nice, orderly parking in the community. And it's been very, very effective this summer. From my experience, I've been around here for a long time, is things are nice, neat, and orderly this year, and we're going to continue to try and rein that in and make it even better for the community. Now I'll turn it over to our consultant, Dixon Resources, and they're going to do the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Keith. And I'll just ask to be sure that everybody is muted. What we're going to do is run through a brief presentation, and then we'll open it up to questions. I'm also joined today by two of my colleagues, Alex and Chisa. They will also be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions as we're going through, please don't hesitate to post into the chat. We'll try to be sure and make sure that that's updated. Alex, I also just wanted to make sure that the recording is underway so that we will have this for reference. Appreciate that for anybody that wasn't able to attend today. And I see a lot of familiar names, but also some new ones as well. So for those of you who have joined us today, we're looking forward to providing you with this update. And for those of you who haven't joined us on a previous conversation about the project, we'll definitely give you a bit of an overview so that you can really understand where and how and the direction that we're heading in. And so, Chisa, if you can just give me a thumbs up and tell me that you can see my screen okay. Terrific. So we again appreciate the opportunity to be here on this journey as we talk about parking management in Kings Beach. So tonight we do have a brief presentation which includes our introductions. You've heard from county staff, and we'll then give you an update on the program. We're going to spotlight some of the data and some of the results specifically from this summer, and then we'll open it up to questions and answers. And again, you can take advantage of the chat. If there's anything that you want to ask about, please go ahead and feel free. And I have also asked that my colleagues include in the chat the contact information for the project so that you're able to rely on that information moving forward, so that if you have any questions or issues moving forward after today's presentation. So my name is Julie Dixon. Again, I'm a parking consultant. Have worked in and around the Tahoe Basin area for about the last 8 years on several projects and initiatives. And this one in particular with Placer County has been a really important one because we have heard loud and clear from the residents and from the business owners the impacts that Kings Beach, the beach proper, bring to our community. And part of this opportunity to help start to regulate and manage parking in a different way has been a big part of that process. And so it's important as we talk about our background and experience. One of the things as we talk about this project that oftentimes folks want us to be able to make changes immediately and to be able to have that immediate impact. And one of the things that I think I'm the most proud of when it relates to the rollout and deployment of this project is that it has been an incremental deployment. And it's been something that while some may have wanted and wished for this to happen more immediately, one of the things that we've talked about in our past meetings is that we didn't get to where we were overnight, and we're not going to fix it overnight. And one of the aspects about parking management is that parking management is a learned behavior, and it's something that for us to be able to have an impact, you want to do that incrementally and gradually. And one of the aspects of the program has really focused on education and information. And many of you that have been following this project closely recognize that last summer was all about education. And we were really ramping up when we talked about even the deployment of the Christmas tree lot last year, late summer. And this year, as we launched and started talking to you all, especially this last spring, we incorporated the changes with the Brook lot as well this particular summer. And so, as we talk about the current program as it's managed today, we have introduced paid parking in the Christmas tree and Brook lots, and it has continued to focus on education. And we've also leveraged technology. License plate recognition technology, what's referred to here as LPR, has been used not only to help manage parking enforcement and for us to help manage the time limits, but also to help us collect data. Many of you that have followed this project for a while might recall that the 85% occupancy measure is the parking industry standard for when you're near or at capacity. And it's when public agencies need to start making different parking management decisions. And so this has been an important factor as we start to talk about regulating and applying some of these parking management changes. Many of you who've been following the program are familiar that this year we incorporated the changes on Brook Avenue as well as in the Brook lot, and those changes remain active. And in fact, we're going to talk about some of the upcoming winter changes that are about to take place. And what some of you have also probably noticed is that we were successfully able to launch the new wayfinding signs. You'll see examples of those in the bottom left corner of the screen, and you'll now see those parking guidance signs basically peppered throughout the community to help effectively guide visitors and residents and customers to be able to find appropriate parking stalls. Something else that you'll see here on the right side of the screen is the rate model that was actually implemented this summer. Now, one of the things that I really like to really reinforce is how important your feedback is. One of the things that we heard loud and clear last year when we launched paid parking was the importance of having short-term parking options. We found out that a lot of folks wanted to be able to just pop over and pick up an ice cream or pick up, a food order. And so that was actually one of the changes that we incorporated this particular summer, was being able to make sure that we had those short-term options. And I think you'll see when we dig into the data how effective that short-term rate has been in being able to help manage those paid parking areas. Some of you that are new to the program might not be aware, but we did implement a paid parking rate, a holiday rate that was utilized on 4th of July and also on Labor Day. And that allows for a flat all-day rate to park in those locations. Many of you might agree that that rate is much lower than maybe what you might have to pay in some of the more private locations. But this is also part of that adaptive modeling as we talk about moving parking management forward. One of the things that we just don't want to overlook is that these are public amenities that we want to make sure that we provide equitable access to everyone in our community, including all of our community members, regardless of their income levels, is we want to make sure that everybody can afford to park in the Kings Beach area as well. So I mentioned one of the upcoming changes that are coming in time for winter. When we introduced the changes to Brook Avenue, we incorporated changes that were specific to the summer design. And now what you're seeing here is that as of the October 31st date, we will actually be transitioning the north side of Brook Avenue to an entirely no parking zone. This is going to be very important as it relates to snow removal. But many of you that have potentially parked in this location, I hope can appreciate the drawings with the lines and the demarcations to allow for more ample parking availability, especially in order to visit our shops and our restaurants. So one of the other features that we're really excited about is the deployment of mobile payment options. Included in that is the ability for folks to be able to scan a QR code and be able to pay with their phone, as well as being able to text to pay. All of these features are currently being tested today. We had hoped to have them rolled out for this summer, and we ran into a few administrative hurdles, but we will be fully tested and readied with these functions and features for next summer as the program goes live. And one of the other things that we'll be working on, especially going into the fall and winter, is doing a complete sign audit so that, again, any other improvements that we can make in terms of signage are ready to go for the next launch of the paid parking management solution. And right now, the paid parking program is scheduled to end on September 30th. And we're basically winterizing those kiosks so that that way we're basically ready for, when the spring thaw comes along for us as well. So a couple of bits of feedback. One of the things that you heard from Keith, who's one of our feet on the street, one of our frontline folks that gets to engage many of our community members and visitors, is that one of the items that we've heard most frequently is that our businesses actually want us to expand the paid parking area. And I will tell you that that's something that is on the roadmap. To be able to expand to the other parking lots as well, the ones that are located behind the businesses. Importantly, when we talk about paid parking, I hope that you all can appreciate that this isn't necessarily about revenue generation. It's really about achieving parking turnover. One of the unique designs of this particular area is the proximity to the lake and the recreation area. Having a popular commercial area located that close to recreational resources is a challenge. And that's one of the reasons why we have to be sure that we don't outprice ourselves. That would basically prohibit customers from visiting our stores and restaurants. So our ability to implement the paid parking model is something that we're hopeful for, that will continue to encourage turnover and transition and to be able to encourage access to our businesses and shops. We have had some privacy concerns from some of our residents about LPR usage. I do want to reinforce and state the state of California has very strict rules associated with LPR data and how it can be used. And one of the easiest ways to describe how we use LPR data for parking management in Kings Beach is that your license plate is a unique identifier to your car. And basically, when the LPR recognizes your license plate, the system in a high-tech way is basically saying that car is good to park there, or that car is not eligible to park there. There's no looking up of a license plate and saying, oh, that car belongs to Julie Dixon or that car belongs to Alex Gate. What the system is simply doing is counting that license plate and recognizing the placement of that license plate and telling us whether or not it's eligible to park or not eligible to park. And that's really the simplest way to describe how the LPR works. One of the other bits of feedback that we heard from the community is that they're really starting to feel the effects of parking management and have actually openly stated that they think it's more orderly and better controlled. And in general, the feedback from visitors has been that there's no real challenge with the paid parking locations that we've deployed, and they think that the current flat rate of $10 is fair. In contrast, many of our local residents do not like our $10 rate, but one of the things that's really important too is there are ample timed parking locations and very much sufficient locations for folks to park that don't want to pay in those paid locations. Those paid locations basically offer a customer convenience to ensure that they can access those businesses and restaurants. So what I'm going to do next is jump into some of the data that we have as a result of the program. We included the dates on each of these slides so that you can see some of this data is literally hot off the presses. And one of the things that's important about the launch of the program is we did launch the paid parking program this summer on June 2nd. And we also went live with our enforcement program. And again, important when we talk about enforcement, it's really about balanced enforcement because we really have tried to leverage the experiences that we had last year to really try to focus on education and outreach. There was a day earlier this summer that I happened to be in the Kings Beach area, and I actually got to witness our enforcement staff actually out there helping educate, inform, and really explain the parking regulations to folks so that they really understood, especially as we were kind of ramping up for the season, to really understand where and how they were supposed to park. We also leveraged our LPR functionality and we're basically fully functional by mid-July. They're about July 17th. And one of the things that what we're going to dig into right now is our transaction analysis. And I think some of you might be surprised at the performance of the system when you consider the Brook lot only has 20 parking spaces and the Christmas tree lot actually only has 19. So what we're going to do now is dig into some of this data, and I'm sure it comes as no surprise when it comes to transactions. The majority of all transactions was utilizing the credit card systems, and we only had about 7% of the transactions accepting cash. This is something that is also important when we talk about a tourism impacted community. Being able to provide a cash option is something that we know is important to do, but you can also see that that reliance on convenience and credit cards is something that is quite prevalent in the parking industry. So what you actually see here is an example of the daily transactions, the total transactions that actually occurred between June 2nd and September 22nd. The blue lines represent the Brook lot and the orange lines represent the Christmas tree lot. And I'm sure it comes as no surprise to anyone. Saturdays and Sundays are our most popular days. We will divvy up some of the data as we talk about weekday versus weekends, but being able to see those total number of transactions, and then we'll dig into the average transactions by day. Again, our weekends being our most popular, but you can see for those parking lots and the quantity of spaces, you can see that we're typically seeing a couple of transitions a day in each of those on the weekends. So we are seeing the movement in those parking lots, and I think that's important, especially when we talk about commercial access to our businesses. And then you can also see, no surprise, where our peaks are. Again, right there in our afternoon time between noon and 5 p.m. is when we see our most prevalent usage. And you can see our after 5 o'clock utilization definitely has a decrease, but we do ensure that this model extends into the 10 p.m. hour because we want to ensure that we have parking options for those folks that want to patronize our restaurants and businesses. What we also included here was a typical weekend versus a holiday weekend. And again, this year in this data includes both 4th of July and Labor Day weekend. And again, no surprise to those of you that live in the region to understand the implications and impacts of what a holiday weekend is like in the basin, especially over there at Kings Beach. And then when we start to talk about the total transactions by time of day versus a typical weekend versus a holiday weekend, again, seeing that that premium really hits on the afternoon, but also on the holiday, I'm sure we can all appreciate everybody does tend to show up early in the morning because everybody wants to capture that premium spot. So having that prevalence of that many folks completing those transactions, I think is again no surprise to those of you that live this every year. So we also just wanted to kind of give you a snapshot of the citations that were issued this particular year. So this season between June 2nd and as of yesterday, September 22nd. The restricted category basically accounts for the violations that occurred primarily in our parking lots. So folks that stayed beyond the posted time limits or folks that did not pay according to the rules and regulations. And you can see kind of a smattering of violations, especially our bus stops and our bus shelter areas. And you can also see the importance of those fire hydrant areas as well. And so really kind of that distribution of penalties, quite a wide variety. But I also think that this commentary speaks to kind of that comment from the community member about the general improvement in order. One of the things that we had heard in past years was kind of the willy-nilly nature of folks parking and kind of putting their cars wherever they could fit them, including on the sidewalks and blocking driveway access. So that's something that we're really pleased to see that this consistent enforcement is something that we know is really important to the program. It's really about continuity because we need folks to really understand that we're managing parking differently in and around Kings Beach. So you can see that today, based on the number of citations that were issued, we basically have $44,000 in revenues that were generated. And the number of citations appealed still remains relatively high. We're at about 21%. This number has come down slightly from last year, but is still on the higher side compared to other parking management programs, but is not atypical to the launch of a new program. This is something that, again, a lot of folks have been talking about, but this is still new in respect to having a continuous, consistent program. And so it's not surprising to see that our numbers are higher than that. Our goal is to have an appeal rate down in about the 10% range. But again, that's going to come through education and continued presence and making sure that we're consistent with our jobs out there and maintaining and managing the rules. Our compliance rate right now is 91%, which is really great when it comes to industry standards and really hitting the mark when it comes to folks basically recognizing those citations and following the rules and regulations associated with that. So what you basically see here now is the total of transactions by the type of rate that was applied. We wanted to be sure to include this because this category right here, the second one over, the short-term rate, this was the direct result of your feedback, was again what I mentioned earlier, folks wanting to be able to have the option to pay for a short-term stay in the parking lot. And you can see that this was a very popular utilization of the parking lots. And we were really proud that this really came as a result of your feedback. And again, over here on the left side, no surprise, the prevalence and prominence of that all-day rate. That's a real customer convenience, especially for those that want to enjoy the area for the day. And then you can see our utilization pretty consistent in both parking lot locations for the holiday. And you can see the number of transactions total that occurred for that evening rate as well. Now, what you basically start to see here is we have the opportunity to really dig into the data. And so this really starts to demonstrate basically the stay duration by rate type. So we can start to dig into the numbers and understand for folks that are basically paying to stay all day, how long they're actually staying in the parking lot. And this is important as we talk about starting to deploy the program throughout other parking locations, that we can start to develop models that are consistent with the utilization of the system. And so one of the things that we're really proud of is this category here on the right. Again, that short-term rate, you can see that 100% of the users are using it and staying within that 2-hour time frame for what they're utilizing it for. And so that's a really important factor when we talk about having effective customer-focused solutions, and being able to have that type of data really speaks to this particular aspect. Now, this is another important statistic because it demonstrates to us when folks are acquiring the different rates by what time of day. And so what was really interesting about the all-day rate in particular is that you can see a pretty even distribution from folks arriving in the morning versus arriving afternoon and paying that rate. And again, same here on the holiday rate, you can see that the majority of folks that are utilizing that parking location, it's pretty well balanced on their transaction being initiated in the morning versus in the afternoon. So what I'm going to dig into next, and I know we're throwing a lot of data at you, but I want to reinforce, we'll make sure that this information is also posted on the county website on our parking landing page, because again, the more transparent that we can be, the more information that we can get out there for you all, the better that this program will be and the more effective it will be. So what you're starting to see here is when I talked about parking occupancy and knowing that our target is really that 85% measure, you can see that when you have that red is when you're basically near at capacity. Now, what's important is that when you see that the red is really kind of spread out and it's not everything is red, that's important because when you have a healthy, robust community, you should have the appearance of those 85% or higher, it just shouldn't be all the time, because if it's all the time, then we really need to start to change policy. These are the aggregates, the average occupancy numbers for the month of June. And you can see for Christmas Tree Lot in June, our average occupancy was 58%. And for Brook Lot, we were at 61%. And then as we move into July, you start to see those numbers creeping up, and you can see Christmas Tree Lot, the average occupancy was 77%, and you can see Brook Lot was at 81%. Now, one of the things that I always like to highlight to folks that don't look at this data on the daily basis like we do is that when you have your afternoon being red, that is very consistent with a popular commercial district. What you typically really do see in most commercial districts is you really see that lunch hour time frame where you really see that popularity. And given that these are two parking lot samples, this is important that we use this information as we talk about parking management solutions moving forward. Now in August, you can start to see the occupancy starting to decrease. Again, no surprise, but Christmas Tree Lot goes down to about 57% average occupancy, and Brook Lot goes down to about 64%. And then moving into September, using the data that we have, basically, I think this data is through September 11th. You can see that we are at 35% occupancy at Christmas Tree Lot and 34% occupancy in Brook Avenue Lot. And so what's important moving forward is that we want to be sure to continue to monitor this data, because it's really what the data states that really should go towards the recommendations. Rather than our opinions or our perceptions, we really want to rely on data moving forward. So importantly as well is turnover. This is another reason why that short-term rate was so important, was to ensure that we could provide that accessible and easy parking for folks that want to visit our restaurants and shops. And you can see that in the Christmas Tree Lot, we actually have 61% of our utilization is under 2 hours, and accounted for, the average stay was about 1.84 hours. And you can see that at Brook Lot, we were right there at about 2 hours, and 53% of our usage for that location, the average length of stay was again right there at that 2 hour mark. So also important is the total number of transactions for the season being June 2nd through September 22nd. You can see that our numbers are pretty equal when we talk about Christmas Tree Lot versus the Brook Lot. And then also when we talk about the overall area, I think it's important to recognize that we're monitoring the data not only just for the parking lots that have paid parking, but we're actually studying the entire area that you see highlighted here on the map. This is important because when we talk about making parking management changes in specific parking lot locations, we need to be sure what is that spillover effect on our neighborhoods and on our neighboring streets. And so what you can see here is that between July 17th and September 11th, our overall average occupancy for all of the areas that are highlighted here was 67%. That's a very healthy parking occupancy, but it's important to understand the ebbs and flows of that as well. And this is one of the reasons why time limit enforcement, especially along our commercial corridor, is going to be so important moving forward, so that again, we can ensure that folks that are parking in those time limited locations are taking advantage of our local businesses and shops and not parking to go to the lake. We have designated locations where they are supposed to park, and it is not for them to park in those time limited spaces. Those are for our commercial resources. So as we dig into the data, you can actually start to see that creep of the increase of average occupancy up to 74% between July 17th and September 11th. And you can see the highlighted streets where you see the red as well as the yellow where you're approaching that 85%. One of the things that I really want to reinforce, and we've talked about this in past meetings, is it's important when you're looking at a map like this, you really want to see the rainbow of colors. It's important to recognize that you will have hot spots, but when you can walk within a block or two and find available parking, that's really what's key. And it's one of the reasons why that signage audit this winter is going to be so important. along with the wayfinding plan, is to help people find those available parking resources so that we can keep parking transitioning and encourage turnover. So this also helps with traffic and congestion, I'm sure we can all appreciate. Instead of having people dawdling trying to figure out where to park, if we can get them to their destination quicker and get them out of their cars, hopefully spending money in our shops and restaurants, then we can actually make sure that our traffic flows and our throughputs are moving more effectively as well. So what you see here is the occupancy impacts for Saturday during the afternoon, and our average occupancy is red. No surprise here, and this is something that as we talk about parking management for next summer, this is something that we will have to be considerate of as we talk about recommendations for how to tackle this impact and this challenge, or if it's another summer of more data collection and figuring out if this is a tolerable solution. But that's something that we're hoping to hear from all of you here tonight as we receive your feedback and as we talk about what to do for next year. So also importantly are the turnover, especially on our streets. And what you can see is that the majority of our streets in the commercial core, you do see that the cars are staying for between 0 and 2 hours. And then when you start to see the surrounding side streets, we really aren't seeing folks staying for much longer than 2 to 4 hours. So that's important overall. And when you look at these streets, the aggregate length of stay is 1.61 hours. And I really want to recognize our parking team because the reality of them out there trying to manage all of the people that are trying to figure out where to park and where is the lake and where do I find the best slice of pizza. They're also out there collecting all of this data so that we can ensure that we can make really robust parking recommendations for the program moving forward. So I want to make sure we're going to pause here and we're going to open it up to question and answer. But before I do that, I'm going to leave this screen on the screen for a moment because I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to connect with this information. I know that Chisa has also put this in the chat. I wanted to recognize Engage Placer. You can use this QR code or you can see the website on the bottom left corner of the screen. And the website is engage.placer.ca.gov/parking management program. This is a very effective way for you to be able to communicate your concerns or needs associated with the program, to give us any of your feedback. You also can find us on our parking landing page, which is www.placer.ca.gov/8857/parking.management.program. And again, the QR codes that are here on the screen, we also have our project email address, pc@dixonresourcesunlimited.com. And lastly, before we open it up to any questions, I wanted to just acknowledge our next stakeholder meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, December 2nd at 6 o'clock, the same time frame. Please do check the same methods of how you found out about today's meeting. We'll be sure that there will be a press release. We'll promote it on the website as well as putting that information out there to everyone to hopefully have folks engage. And our goals and objectives for that December 2nd meeting is really to talk about the next launch for next year, taking the feedback that we get from you all tonight, as well as any lessons learned, further data analysis, and looking at improvements that we can make for next summer's program. So with that, I'm going to pause and I am going to ask my colleague Chisa. Chisa, are there any comments in the chat that we should be acknowledging first and foremost?
There are no questions in the chat.
Thank you for that. I am going to stop share so that way I can see anybody that wants to raise their hand. One of the things that you all can do is you can look at the bottom of your screen. There is a React button. And if you select that React button, it should give you the option to raise your hand. You also can turn your camera on and literally raise your hand like this. And what'll happen is I will ask you to unmute yourself. and then give you the floor to ask any of your questions or provide any of your feedback. So, does anyone have any commentary? And I see you, Adam, so bear with me 1 minute here. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, of
Yep, thank you.
course.
Great presentation as always, and thank you for bringing the data. I know it's all very new data as you're just wrapping up the summer, so it's just great to see that. So I just had two questions, really one comment and a question. It'd be interesting to look at citations by day versus by type, just to see that, when we see that Saturday and all that red across the grid as well as our parking lots, I think it might be interesting to look at that because I'm wondering if, and I know you can't have multiple things, but one thing to consider would be like, those are the days that our businesses have the best opportunity in Tahoe to maximize business. But if we're getting a lot of citations for people saying 2, 3, 4 hours, then they're not getting that turnover that we need to support our businesses. So just be interesting to see that.
Yep.
And maybe by location, if there's an area that we see a lot of those citations. I thought it was also interesting that all the other categories were about equal to the restricted. So if you quickly do the math, it looked like they were just about 50-50 between the two. So that's kind of interesting. And then you mentioned a comment around it's good to see that rainbow effect. And we saw that on the average, but then when we started looking by day, we didn't see that.
Right.
Have you seen in other communities where there's specific day restrictions versus just a standard restriction? So it's 2 hours all the time, or Saturdays and Sundays, it's only 1 hour and it's 2 hours Monday through Friday or whatever.
That's a great question. And I will tell you that this summer, the Ventura Harbor launched a very unique and new program that included different parking operations rules on the weekend, on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And so I'll tell you what, let us dive into the effect. I will say there have been struggles because it's very difficult to be able to communicate. The rules are different on a certain set of days compared to others. And so allow us the opportunity to do a post-mortem with Ventura Harbor on what their experience was this summer. And we'll definitely come prepared with that information for the December meeting to be able to share that with all of you, what their experiences have been. Theirs is probably the most new and most relevant one. Sometimes you'll see private operators will do things like that, but those are typically staffed locations where they are able to, kind of manhandle, or they're gated locations that are much easier to control. So that's part of the challenge when you talk about, especially the public street, is really being able to communicate what those rules are. But we'll definitely take that challenge on. And I think your commentary about the citations by day and by location, our ability to break that down in more granularity. We obviously threw a lot of data at you guys tonight too. So our ability to do a deeper dive, and then we'll have the comprehensive summer data as well. So we'll be sure to be prepared for that for the December meeting.
Yep, thank you. And thanks for all the hard work from Placer County as well.
Yeah, no, this has been a team effort, including the community. So we appreciate you, Adam. Does anyone else want to raise their hand and ask a question or provide any feedback?
We do have one question in the chat from Anthea Humphreys. Why has Brockway Vista not been included?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's just been about incremental change. And so that's something that we can definitely incorporate into the considerations for next summer. And we'll come prepared in December for the game plan for where to potentially expand, especially utilizing the data. It was really the opportunity of doing things incrementally. And the changes that were made to Brook Lot and to Brook Avenue were some pretty substantial ones for anybody that went onto those locations. I'm sure you can appreciate some of the engineering work that went into those locations, but we'll definitely incorporate that into the considerations as we move through the post-mortem and work towards what we're going to do this next summer. Thank you for that question. Does anyone else want to raise their hand or ask any other questions? We have plenty of time. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just one more time, just because I want to make sure that everybody has the Engage Placer information. Bear with me here 1 second here. And Chisa, can you see that again? Oh, and I see Adam. Hold on 1 second. And Chisa, you can see that again. Perfect. Great. Bear with me 1 second, Adam. If you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Sorry, one more question.
Sure.
When you made, or when the decision was made for the no parking for winter, we have a number of businesses on that side of the road that don't have access. The businesses on the other side have access both from the state route and Brook, whereas the businesses on the side that's the no parking area don't have that. And I thought I noticed that the parking only went about halfway down Brook Avenue,
Mhm.
if I recall, versus down maybe where some of those businesses are. I'm wondering how we came to that and how we're making sure that we provide access to those businesses.
Definitely. I think that this was part of that whole engineering redesign, was the opportunity, especially to experiment with this summer, especially when we talk about the snow season. Jared, was that something that you wanted to tackle when we talk about the design on Brook, or does someone else from the county want to speak towards that? I'm just going to make sure that Jared can unmute himself. Bear with me 1 second, Adam.
Yeah, no problem. And if we don't have an answer right now, I can connect with Jared too.
Yeah, no
I just
problem.
want to make sure, because if that's all no parking that whole length, which I totally get snow removal, so don't get
Yep.
me wrong there. I just want to make sure that there are some businesses there that customers need access to, and it didn't look like the parking side went far enough to cover them.
Got it. I think Jared was able to unmute himself. Jared, did you want to add any comments about Brook Avenue, especially for snow removal?
Yeah, can you guys hear me? I'm having technical difficulties on my end, but
We can hear you.
okay. Yeah, so I don't know the full history of that, Adam. We can definitely dig into that of what the regions were and why specifically they were put within those parameters. So yeah, we can kind of follow up on that and definitely follow up with the full group in December too.
Perfect. Great. Thanks, Adam.
Mhm.
Great. Anyone else have any questions or comments, or anybody else want to add any feedback? And Chiefs, only because I brought my screen back up. Any other questions in the comment box? The chat
Yes.
box?
We have one question from Jody. Will Seekline also be included in the long-term plan?
Jody, we'll be sure to incorporate that into the discussion for December when we talk about the next phase. Right now, we're definitely still in the wrap-up phase of summer, but we'll be sure that that'll be addressed in the this meeting that we have in December, on December 2nd. And Jared, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Just want to make one other comment as well. Just for placing any feedback, making sure that everybody's using the Engage Placer site. There are several other websites out there in the public which will not go back to Placer County. So the main website are the ones that you see here on the screen. So making sure if you do have comments, the only way for those comments to directly get to us is by using these Engage Placer websites and the websites that are on this page right now. So just making sure everybody's aware of that and not utilizing other websites that may state that they're collecting information, but these are the ones we'll actually get back and are directly related to the county.
Very much. Thank you for that, Jared. We really appreciate it. That's why I wanted to put it back up on screen, just so everybody has that for reference. Just while we're wrapping up here, I just really want to, first of all, thank all of you. This is definitely a journey. And it, like we said from the beginning, it won't be solved overnight. So everybody's patience is really appreciated. I think the one thing that we can all appreciate is the continuity is really key. Having the staff be hired for this summer, I think really, really did make a difference. And it's really nice to have folks that really care about the community in which they work and live. So I just really want to recognize staff and everything that they have done and continue to do in terms of going above and beyond when it comes to helping tackle this issue. This is not an easy issue to resolve. I think we can all appreciate that. And it's why you really kind of see this whole transportation parking management all around the basin being such a prevalent topic. And it's one that I really appreciate that the county is really kind of chipping away at the iceberg. I shouldn't say iceberg given that winter season is upon us, but I do wish all of you a very safe and happy fall. And I'll look one last time. Chisa, any comments in the chat? Not seeing any questions, not seeing any hands raised. We will be sure that this information will be saved and shared on the Parking Management Program page. Give us about a week to be sure everything gets posted. And again, as Jared mentioned, please do use the Engage Placer website so that way we can be sure that this direct feedback is heard. I do want to again acknowledge the changes that we made to the program this summer were the direct result of your feedback. So if you have thoughts or ideas, please don't be shy to share those. This whole concept of it takes a village is really authentic as it talks about how we're going to continue to manage this impact and continuing to move forward. So with that, I will bid you all adieu. Wish you a happy fall and thank you again for your support and participating here tonight. And everyone have a good rest of your night. Thanks for coming today. Have a great night. Bye bye.